Hello Vision Nation. In this episode, we'll cover the story of how Mike Cessario built a $700 million business in just 4 years. Okay, so that's impressive on its own. But the absolutely crazy thing is that he did this by, wait for it, selling canned water. Yeah, you heard that right, water in a can, getting a $700 million valuation. I mean, come on. We're talking about a product category that's basically dominated by the big guns like Coca-Cola and Nestle. But somehow, this dude managed to skyrocket his business and give these bigwigs a run for their money. And let's not forget, he achieved this monumental feat by selling a product that's essentially the same no matter where you go. I mean, have you ever tasted any difference between Evian and Fiji? It's all just water, folks. But here's the kicker. We're gonna dive into the story and find out exactly how he managed to stand out in such a crowded market. So buckle up and get ready for an episode that's gonna blow your mind. Alright, let's dive right in. Welcome to Wall Street Vision, where we cover true stories about people making millions. I'm Vlad Dolgochev. So Mike Cessario was born in the 80s. He grew up playing in punk rock and heavy metal bands outside of Philly, and he's got full tattoo sleeves on both his arms. That's not the most conventional start for a guy that would become the founder of a $700 million business. He was a musician, but he was also designing the flyers, creating the album covers, and doing all of the business and creative stuff related to the band. He wasn't just shredding guitars and pounding drums. The guy was a jack of all trades with a serious creative side. Instead of pursuing music, he studied to become a graphic designer. He got to working in advertising, and early on he worked on a campaign for Virgin America. That's Richard Branson's airline. And here's the thing, while he was working on this campaign, he noticed something really interesting. He noticed how Virgin would go into markets where products were boring and stale, and then they'd do some super creative marketing and get tons of market share that way. Genius stuff, right? It's a smart tactic where Virgin could compete with the big businesses by basically having the same products, but winning market share by advertising in a unique way. Mike went on to become an advertising creative director, and he worked in a bunch of agencies with big clients. And one of his clients was Netflix. That's where Mike created teasers for shows like House of Cards, Narcos, and Stranger Things. And that taught him a lot of tricks for capturing people's attention and what you need to do to get people hooked on your product. Okay, so that kind of covers Mike's earlier life, right? Now you might be asking, how does someone go from that and then launch a water product and get $100 million in sales only 3 years later? That just seems insane because you always hear people saying that you don't want to compete with massive brands that can easily outspend you. The water market is dominated by billion-dollar companies, so how did Mike come up with an idea to disrupt them? And how did he make it all work? Okay, so you've got to understand the backstory here. While he was playing in punk bands, one thing that he noted about that whole scene is that even in this hardcore environment, there was still a subset of people who were called straight edge, and they were vocal about not drinking or doing any drugs. The running joke is that there are probably more vegans at a heavy metal show than at a Taylor Swift concert. I mean, it could be true. I could see the T-Swift fans loving those bacon bits in their Caesar salads. Okay, on top of that, when Mike was watching some friends perform at a music festival, he noticed that a lot of the musicians were drinking out of Monster energy drink cans, but they were actually drinking water. A lot of the performers didn't want all the sugar and caffeine in the energy drink, so they drank water out of these energy drink cans. That was a sneaky little trick that kept the sponsors happy. And I've heard of other pro athletes doing this at press conferences as well, so I think it's pretty common. Alright, so Mike noted that and he filed it off in the back of his head. What happened was years later, when he was in his early 30s, he was working on this public service ad campaign about the risks of sugary energy drinks. He was talking to the client, and his idea was to do this canned water ad that was edgy and hardcore. Now, the client was really conservative and they hated this idea, so it got rejected. Mike kept on thinking about that concept, so he worked on it for the next 2 years, trying to figure out what the plan would be and how he could market it. This is what a lot of people don't realize, is sometimes entrepreneurs take years of work and planning before they launch something. And the media always makes it look like an overnight success, but nobody talks about the 10 years of hard work before the big paydays. So, what was this crazy idea that Mike had? Well, he wanted to create the most hardcore water out there, And how did he do it? By picking the dumbest name possible for a safe and healthy drink. The name he picked was Liquid Death. He ran off and trademarked it quickly because he felt like that was a winner. And this is the tagline that he went with: "Murder your thirst." And the whole brand was designed to look super hardcore, with skulls and all sorts of crazy designs, the whole 9 yards. And here's the kicker: he didn't just want to sell it in regular old water bottles. Oh no, he wanted it to come in tallboy cans. That way, people drinking Liquid Death at concerts, bars, or parties would fit right in with people drinking alcoholic beverages. Genius. And get this, Mike wasn't alone. He had 3 partners in this crazy venture. None of the partners had ever brought a new beverage into the market. They were 4 regular-ish dudes going up against these giants like Nestle and Coca-Cola. These guys were major underdogs and they weren't afraid to take on the big guns. Now, some people think that this was just a total fluke and that Mike got lucky. He had a good hunch that this might work as a product. Alright, let's take a step back. What am I talking about here? Well, if you looked at the craft beer market, you would see all these super cool designs and brands. I'm talking about names like Skull Crusher IPA, Arrogant Bastard Ale, and a whole lot more. People are going nuts for these craft beers and small, handcrafted products in general. A lot of consumers are just sick of the same old boring drinks from the big companies. So that's where Mike comes in. He saw what was happening in the craft beer world and decided to take a chance. And he used his experience and creativity to come up with something totally unique. He slapped some wild designs and branding on a boring, everyday product, kind of like what Richard Branson was doing. And the proof of concept was basically there if you took a look at the craft beer market. And you gotta remember, the health industry would always promote their products in this boring, plain vanilla type of way. Who wants to see another ad for some bland health product with a smiling woman eating a salad, right? Mike recognized that he could stand out in this space if he did something radically different. Having a water called Liquid Death and having a friggin' skull on the can would instantly stand out on store shelves. He talked to some investors, but he kept on getting shut down left and right. People thought that this was the dumbest idea they'd ever heard of. They were all like, "Oh no, the cans look too much like beer, people are gonna be confused." And they said retailers will never carry a product with the word death on it. But none of that stopped Mike. So what did he do? He created a Facebook page and put some photoshopped images that made it look like the product already existed. Then he shot a 2-minute commercial with his wife's actress friend that cost him around $1,500, and he spent another few $1,000s on promoting the ad. Now let me tell you, this ad was edgy as hell. It's all about how dangerous and lethal water can be, and it's got this risque ending that really surprised people. But the ad was really well done and it had that shock factor. Fast forward a few months and this ad went totally viral. It had 3 million views and almost 80,000 followers on their Facebook page. That was more followers than Aquafina had at the time. Can you believe it? And that was a great proof of concept for investors. After 2 years of trying to float this idea around, he finally got $1.6 million in seed funding from a venture capital firm. Mike was 37 years old at this point. A lot of people were still really skeptical, by the way. They were saying that it was a bad idea, and they were comparing it to other failed products that got a lot of hype early on. But Mike was determined to make it work. So everything we just talked about was only one piece of the puzzle. He had another huge roadblock. For him, having the water come in a can was really important. First, because it looks like it could be a beer or some cool hipster drink. And second, because they wanted the product to have an environmental twist to it. These days, plastic waste is a huge issue, and aluminum cans can be recycled more easily than plastic water bottles. So Mike called up a bunch of canning companies and they all said that they couldn't can regular water. Why is that? Well, their factories are set up to can drinks that are carbonated or have preservatives. They couldn't just can regular water, and it was looking like his idea might not work after all. But Mike kept being persistent, and he finally found a canning factory all the way out in Austria, and they could actually can mineral water. He even flew out there to meet them and make sure this was actually something that could work. Talk about being dedicated. So just think of all the roadblocks this guy faced, from investors saying no, to having to fly out to Europe to secure a supplier. He had to go through so much rejection to get this product to market. Okay, so they launched the product and it's been a huge success. They had people interested from that online ad they did, and they also got bars, barbershops, and tattoo parlors to carry Liquid Death as well. That was their early market. In the first month after launching, they sold over $100,000 worth of products, and they only spent about $2,000 on marketing. A little while later, they completely sold out of all their product. That year of their launch, they had $2.8 million in sales. And the sales just kept growing month after month, and they're on track to go over $200 million in sales in their 4th year from launching. They also launched in Whole Foods, and word on the street is that it became their fastest selling water brand ever. And then what happened next was huge. Live Nation also became an equity partner in the business. And as part of their deal, Live Nation agreed to only sell Liquid Death across its venues and festivals for a period of time. That meant that Live Nation was not going to sell any other waters. So 2 years into the business, Liquid Death grew to be a 60-person company. Now, the way Mike looks at this brand is that it's almost like an entertainment brand instead of just being a water company. Because all waters pretty much taste the same, he has to go super hard on differentiating his product. And the best way to do that is through marketing. And here's one filter that Mike uses when making decisions for the brand. He basically asks, would Slayer think this is cool? And that's a simple way for him to decide what direction to take things. It's like an inner compass for the business. And they've kept up with this edgy marketing. Like one example is they made this contest offering a free 18-year supply of Liquid Death to anyone who gives their children a legal name like Megalodon Bone Crusher. And people love this brand. Just a few years after launching, over 100 people got the Liquid Death skull logo tattooed on their body. How many people are out there getting an Aquafina tattoo across their neck? Not many, okay? Now this is already an incredible story, and you might think, okay, isn't Coca-Cola or some other huge brand gonna just copy what he did and crush him? And I mean, that could happen, but Mike believes that the story of the brand and its authenticity is a great moat for his business. And also, Coke could do serious damage to its brand if it tried some of this really edgy stuff that Mike's doing out there. And he believes that their whole approach of using focus groups is not suited well to competing with a quick and nimble startup that he has. So today, they've raised almost $200 million from investors, and that's allowing them to scale super quickly before any other brand catches up or copies what they're doing. Alright Vision Nation, that wraps it up for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, you can check out the last episode we did. It's about an entrepreneur making $3 million per year with 0 employees. It's a really great inspirational story, you should check it out. Also, if you're a new listener, please hit the subscribe button, smash that like button, and leave me a comment to let me know what you thought of this episode, because you're an amazing human being and I would really appreciate that. It doesn't cost you anything and it really helps our show so I can keep making interesting episodes for you. Thank you and I hope you have an amazing day.